Brady Bunch, huge. Favorite episode?
Commercial when I was growing up that I did, because I got to work for Mattel all the time. It was so much fun. It was a doll called Baby Patterburg. I wasn't looking, and I hit the car in front of me.
Marcia Brady's style didn't just evolve, it transformed. From modest dresses to bold, daring cuts, her wardrobe mirrored a cultural revolution, quietly challenging what was deemed appropriate for a teenage girl on TV. But one outfit, in particular, pushed the boundaries in ways you might not have noticed. Ready to uncover the quiet rebellion hiding in plain sight? Let's take a look at the fashion evolution that had the world talking. Patterns that pop, how fashion went brave. At the beginning of the Brady Bunch, Marcia Brady's wardrobe fit perfectly within the wholesome, safe, and family-friendly mold of the show. Early seasons showcased a wardrobe that emphasized youthfulness without rocking any boats. The clothes were simple, modest, and clean. Nothing too bold or revealing, just pleasant, everyday patterns that reflected the idealized American suburban life. The wardrobe department ensured that every outfit stayed within the lines of what was acceptable for television in the late 1960s and early 1970s. But as time passed, the wardrobe choices began to evolve, quietly pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable for young women on TV. What started as a subtle shift soon turned into a moment of rebellion, albeit a quiet one. Marcia's early outfits were about as safe as they come. Simple pastel dresses, floral prints that were more cute than daring, and soft, unfussy fabrics. But as fashion and culture started to change, so did the patterns that adorned her clothes. This was a slow but sure transformation, as the designers began to introduce more vibrant, striking patterns that reflected the shift in society. The first sign of rebellion showed through Marcia's first transformation from pure girlhood to her new rebellious identity. The prints on her clothes became the visual language of a generation ready to shed its old skin and embrace the boldness of modern youth. The change started with first steps, which introduced simple stripes and soft polka dots and geometric shapes that maintained their basic design. The patterns that followed reserved their shock value because they delivered an uplifting experience to viewers. The project presented playful elements which created a fun atmosphere while showing two important elements about themselves which developed into their growing need for independence. The prints started to change their appearance because they were introduced in subsequent seasonal transformations. The familiar patterns developed into something completely different, which brought a whole new experience to people who had first encountered them. The designers for her wardrobe created new fashion boundaries, which they could not approach during the earlier fashion period. Marcia's outfits created a dance between modest fashion and stylish design when they showed cultural changes through their clothing while remaining within existing fashion boundaries. Floral designs, which had only appeared in modest outfits, previously became popular during the 1970s. The prints, which originally functioned as innocent design elements, changed their role to become the main design element of her outfit. The once simple floral patterns turned into intricate, larger-than-life designs that reflected the larger-than-life changes happening in society. These were not the soft, pastel florals of the early 60s. They were vibrant, energetic, and confident, just like the youth of the era. And what you may not have realized was how far these wardrobe shifts pushed boundaries in their own quiet way. Loose and carefree, early innocence. When Marcia Brady first appeared on the Brady Bunch, her wardrobe was carefully curated to project a sense of innocence and modesty. The early outfits were a visual representation of everything the 1970s TV landscape demanded from its young female characters: neat, sweet, and wholesome. The designs embraced the ideal of childhood without rushing toward adulthood. Loose dresses with soft, flowing fabrics became her trademark. These dresses weren't tight or constricting. They moved with her every step, reinforcing the image of a carefree teenager who was still living in the comfort zone of youth. There were no sharp, angular lines or overly structured garments. Instead, Marcia's early looks were all about softness and comfort, both in style and in spirit. The key to these outfits was their simplicity: big collars, puffed sleeves, and voluminous skirts were the signature elements that defined her early wardrobe. They embodied the idealized image of a young girl not yet entangled in the complexities of adult fashion. These looks were all about innocence. There was no question that Marcia was a wholesome, pure figure, and her wardrobe spoke to that narrative. Even when the characters on the show got into minor conflicts or mischief, Marcia's clothes remained consistent, a symbol of stability and calm in the chaotic world of television. Her wardrobe, while stylish, was never overtly glamorous or revealing. It was as if her clothes were designed to remind viewers that Marcia was a typical teenager, someone they could relate to, someone they could trust. The essential element of Marcia's initial appearance rested on its natural simplicity. She selected dresses that moved freely, while her hairstyle choices demonstrated the relaxed style of that particular era. Her hair, which she frequently wore in loose waves or basic braids, showed that she still maintained her childhood state with her pure, unspoiled, and worry-free appearance. The creators designed Marcia's character development to show her experience as a teenager while she maintained her childlike qualities. Her clothing choice demonstrated that children who grow up can still maintain their pure nature. The show created a path for Marcia to develop into adulthood while maintaining her youthful appeal. The initial outfits, which defined her character throughout the show, developed into a larger narrative, which established her fundamental character traits. The combination of loose dresses and oversized collars which characterized Marcia's early years served as a visual indication that her upcoming transformation would begin at this point. The basic, pure clothing created an ideal backdrop for the upcoming fashion changes, which would occur during the subsequent seasons. The natural progression of Marcia's character development through the story made her final transformation into a different appearance feel expected by viewers. Playing it safe, modest beginnings. In the early seasons of the Brady Bunch, Marcia Brady's wardrobe choices were firmly rooted in the safety rules of 1970s television. At a time when family-friendly programming dominated the small screen, every aspect of a character's appearance had to adhere to a strict code of modesty and decency. For young women on TV, that meant avoiding any fashion choices that might be considered too revealing or controversial. Marcia's early outfits were all about playing it safe. Nothing too bold, nothing too daring. The wardrobe designers made sure that every dress, skirt, and blouse she wore fit within the expectations of the era. While the character of Marcia had her moments of personality and flair, her wardrobe was carefully curated to make sure she was always seen as wholesome and appropriate for a primetime audience. The cuts and patterns of Marcia's early outfits reflected the need to stay within the boundaries of what was considered acceptable. Conservative was the name of the game. Dresses with A-line cuts, puffed sleeves, and knee-length skirts were the norm. The patterns were simple: soft florals, stripes, and checks that were feminine but not overly noticeable. Marcia's different appearance from her classmates created an impression that she would become someone who took dangerous chances through rebellious behavior.
Marcia Brady's clothes because nothing she wore was obvious enough to provoke outrage.
She showed herself through her clothing choices, which created a modest appearance that matched the clean-cut image television networks promoted during that period. Her clothes ensured she maintained a low profile because her beauty remained present, while her style did not create waves that would disturb family television shows. The basic clothes she wore to public events showed her inner struggle. The teenage girl wanted to express her unique fashion sense, but needed to follow the rules of her TV daughter character. The designers who created Marcia's wardrobe needed to create outfits which teenagers would find appealing, yet maintained a youthful appearance that would not exceed their age limits. The process of maintaining this equilibrium proved to be a difficult task. The outfits she wore helped her achieve an understated appearance, but they restricted her ability to follow the latest fashion movements of her time. Her public image showed her as a developing young woman, but her clothing choices forced her to remain restricted within a society that needed more time to accept young women as valid members of society. Youthful vibes, playful patterns. In the world of the Brady Bunch, fashion wasn't just about looking good. It was about capturing the essence of a character. For Marcia Brady, that meant mirroring her playful, youthful nature through her wardrobe choices. As the series progressed, the costume designers recognized that her character wasn't just the sweet, wholesome teenager she was originally portrayed as. Marcia had a spark, a sense of joy that needed to be reflected in what she wore. Her clothes started to evolve from simple, modest dresses to more fun and energetic designs that conveyed a sense of excitement and vibrancy. It was as if the wardrobe was no longer just a backdrop, but an active participant in telling her story, adding depth to her character with every pattern and color. The shift toward more playful patterns was subtle at first, but it quickly became clear that Marcia was growing into a young woman with a distinct sense of style. The wardrobe designers knew exactly what they were doing. They played with bold, bright colors and lively prints that fit perfectly with the spirit of the time. From bubblegum pinks to deep, sharp blues, Marcia's outfits popped with energy. These vibrant hues were more than just eye-catching. They were a visual expression of Marcia's blossoming personality. She wasn't just the model daughter anymore. She was becoming a teenager who had opinions, a personality, and most importantly, an individuality that couldn't be ignored. Her clothes reflected that, infusing the show with a youthful exuberance that resonated with audiences of all ages. The most noticeable aspect of Marcia's clothing modifications during this period, which she experienced, brought forward her selection of clothing through geometric shapes and abstract patterns. The delicate floral patterns, together with the gentle striped designs from previous seasons, disappeared. Marcia chose to wear dresses and tops and skirts, which featured strong, straight design elements and solid geometric patterns. The contemporary designs created active visual movements, which proved that Marcia maintained her contemporary existence because she chose to wear modern designs. The modern generation, which she belonged to, embraced new developments together with the right to express themselves freely. The 1970s aesthetic found its expression through geometric patterns, which used bright colors that contrasted sharply with each other. The new designs brought energetic colors to the show, but the wardrobe team needed to maintain Marcia's appearance according to television standards. The designers created a precise balance because their designs needed to maintain family-friendly content. The designers created a visual style which used vibrant patterns and energetic colors to create an enjoyable experience without reaching the point of excessive sophistication or advanced fashion trends. Despite the vibrancy of these new designs, the wardrobe team still had to keep Marcia's look appropriate for television's standards. The balance was delicate. Too much boldness could have veered into territory that wasn't deemed family-friendly. Yet, the wardrobe designers managed to walk that line perfectly. The playful patterns and bright colors were energetic, yes, but they never crossed the boundary into anything too mature or overtly fashionable. Everything was designed to still fit within the wholesome, innocent image that Marcia's character had originally established. Even though her clothes were now full of life, they remained charmingly innocent, keeping her within the parameters of what was acceptable for a teen star on a family sitcom. Shorter skirts, bigger impact, fashion evolution. When the Brady Bunch first aired, Marcia Brady's wardrobe was all about knee-length skirts and dresses that fit comfortably within the television guidelines of the time. These looks were carefully constructed to reflect innocence and modesty, a reflection of the conservative nature of 1960s and early 1970s family programming. But as the show progressed, something subtle but significant began to shift. Her skirts started getting shorter. It wasn't an abrupt change, but rather a gradual evolution that hinted at a larger cultural movement occurring outside of the Brady household. Marcia, once seen as the epitome of the ideal teenage girl, was slowly growing up, and her wardrobe began to reflect that. What had once been knee-length dresses now occasionally grazed above the knee, challenging the previously established boundaries of acceptable fashion for young women on television.
Oh, I thought it'd be nice to have the meeting out here on the patio.
This subtle shift toward shorter hemlines was no coincidence. It reflected the changing tides of fashion and society at the time. The early 1970s saw the miniskirt become a defining feature of women's fashion, a symbol of youthful rebellion and a departure from the conservative norms that dominated the previous decade. On a cultural level, the miniskirt represented empowerment and freedom as women began to embrace fashion that was bold, confident, and undeniably feminine. While Marcia's skirts never reached the extreme heights of those worn by models on fashion runways, the move from knee-length to miniskirts in her wardrobe was significant. It symbolized the growing independence of young women and their increasing desire for self-expression. Marcia was no longer just the sweet, innocent daughter. She was becoming a young woman with her own style, and that style was evolving along with the times. Despite how gradual the change was, it didn't go unnoticed. Behind the scenes, these fashion decisions caused a quiet uproar. The conservative standards of network television at the time didn't allow for drastic shifts in character appearance, especially when it came to wardrobe. While Marcia's outfits were still within the bounds of what was deemed appropriate for television, the shift toward shorter skirts was definitely a risk. Producers and wardrobe designers had to tread carefully, ensuring that these changes didn't cross the line into something considered too provocative for a family show. These subtle fashion choices were like a quiet rebellion, a push against the strict rules that governed how young women were portrayed on screen. The dress that hugged too much. One of the most memorable moments in the Brady Bunch came when Marcia Brady wore a dress that fit just a little too tightly for comfort. The outfit in question wasn't the most daring or provocative in the traditional sense, but it was enough to make a subtle statement that many viewers didn't fully grasp at the time. The dress, which hugged her figure a bit more closely than the usual loose, flowy garments she wore, went largely unnoticed by the general audience. But behind the scenes, it caused a stir. It wasn't just a dress. It was a symbol of Marcia's slow but undeniable transition from childhood to adulthood, and it reflected a larger cultural shift that was quietly taking place. This outfit didn't make headlines or stir up public outrage, but it marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of both the character and the series itself. The viewers who watched the episode reacted with indifference, while the wardrobe team understood their achievements. The dress that hugged Marcia's body a little more than usual didn't align with the perfectly curated modesty that had previously been the show's trademark. The modest cuts and safe silhouettes that defined Marcia's look up until this point had set a certain tone, one of innocence, purity, and wholesomeness. But this dress introduced a shift in that image. The character development showed her progress toward body confidence through her development into a woman who understood how others perceived her. The crew and producers who designed every outfit to uphold wholesome standards found a reason to raise eyebrows because the design showed an indirect break from tradition. This design element created a quiet rebellion against the show's standard visual style, while it confirmed Marcia's development into an identity beyond her role as a typical TV teenage character. The real importance of this wardrobe choice established two main functions because it displayed tightness, which attracted human gaze and showed Marcia's character development, which she made throughout the show. The character of Marcia Brady was developed to show how young women in society experienced social changes throughout her life. The wardrobe equivalent of a self-discovery moment was represented by this dress. The clothes that fit her body more closely represented Marcia's progression toward self-acceptance of her changing identity. As she stood a little taller and became more comfortable in her own skin, her wardrobe had to evolve too. The dress wasn't a signal of rebellion or defiance. It was a subtle nod to the increasing awareness Marcia had of herself as a young woman, not just as the ideal daughter. As the show progressed, these wardrobe choices didn't just reflect fashion trends. They mirrored the shift in how young women were being perceived on TV. Under the spotlight, tops that moved. As the Brady Bunch progressed, Marcia Brady's wardrobe underwent an exciting transformation, and one of the most significant changes was in her tops. Initially, her outfits were simple, with loose, boxy cuts that kept her looking every bit the innocent, wholesome girl next door. But as the show evolved, so did her fashion. The tops Marcia wore began to take on a more structured fit, embracing a refined silhouette that not only flattered her shape, but also allowed for greater fluidity in movement. This shift wasn't just about style. It was about giving Marcia a presence, allowing her clothes to move with her as she became more self-assured and confident in her own body. The change in Marcia's tops was subtle, yet profound. The garments she wore evolved from stiff, rigid fabrics to those that flowed and draped in a way that highlighted her natural movement. Tops that once hung loosely from her frame now moved with her in a way that felt more organic, adding an unexpected sensuality to her character. The show maintained its non-offensive tone throughout its runtime. Marcia used her fashion choices to show her developing understanding of herself and her physical appearance. Her tops, with their flowing material and their designer-built forms, became more than mere clothing items because they demonstrated her character's development. Marcia had transformed from being a sweet, innocent girl into a young woman who displayed both self-assurance and refinement. The beauty of this wardrobe shift lies in its subtlety. The tops that moved with Marcia's body didn't scream for attention, but they had an undeniable effect. The way the fabric swayed with her every movement made Marcia more noticeable than ever because of the perfect way the tops draped over her shoulders. The goal of the project required clients to create boundaries which their costumes could not exceed. The costumes needed to show their intended function, which would support the character without making the character too overpowering for the plot. The garments gave her body shape. They created an elegant appearance which made her look more mature while she maintained the childlike quality that defined her role. The wardrobe changes you didn't notice. Marcia Brady's wardrobe didn't just change in bold, obvious ways. It evolved through a series of small, subtle adjustments that marked a quiet rebellion against the television norms of the time. On the surface, everything appeared innocent and safe, but if you looked closely, you'd notice the subtle shifts in her outfits that reflected a larger cultural shift happening behind the scenes. It wasn't the flashy, attention-grabbing changes that defined Marcia's wardrobe evolution. It was the small details, a shift in color here, a change in fabric there, a slight alteration in silhouette. Each of these incremental adjustments signaled Marcia's growing maturity and independence. It wasn't just about looking older. It was about subtly breaking free from the restrictions that once defined her character. These wardrobe changes, though subtle, had a profound impact on the way Marcia was perceived by the audience. The introduction of bolder colors, richer fabrics, and more defined silhouettes didn't scream for attention, but they made a statement nonetheless. A once pastel-heavy wardrobe shifted toward more dynamic hues, reflecting the increased confidence of the character. The fabrics progressed through a transition from lightweight, breathable materials to heavy, structured designs which showed opulent craftsmanship. The designers used these texture and design alterations to show character development through their visual choices. Marcia's transformation from a young girl to a young woman became apparent through her clothing choices, which displayed her resistance against the belief that television characters must stay childish. Marcia's character development appeared through her clothing choices, which created a silent narrative about her transformation. Most viewers failed to recognize the changes because they displayed such an unexpected nature. The shifts created through careful planning did not generate any public outrage because they made Marcia more visible to others. Her dress appeared more formal because she wore a darker color, and her skirts had grown into more sophisticated designs. The smallest changes created an effect that reached all areas of the installation. Her wardrobe changes supported her development from a cute daughter to a confident young woman who existed through television's early days. Viewers didn't consciously recognize that Marcia was growing up, but they felt it. The wardrobe selections for her character enabled Marcia to show her personal growth while remaining acceptable to viewers. She maintained her ability to connect with others while advancing toward her future self. Fitting in, how tops got more defined. As the Brady Bunch evolved, so did Marcia Brady's wardrobe, particularly when it came to her tops. In the earlier seasons, her outfits were characterized by loose, billowy tops that contributed to the sweet, innocent image that the show had carefully crafted for her character. These tops were comfortable and modest, perfect for maintaining the wholesome, idealized image of a teenage girl in the 60s. But as the show progressed into the early 70s, there was a noticeable shift. Marcia's tops began to transform from soft, voluminous silhouettes to more tailored and fitted designs. This change wasn't just about style, it was a reflection of her character's growth and the changing cultural landscape of the time. The transformation in her wardrobe marked a subtle but powerful shift toward a more mature, self-aware version of Marcia, one who was no longer just a cute teenager, but a young woman finding her place in a rapidly evolving society. The shift from billowy to more defined tops didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual, almost imperceptible change that allowed Marcia's character to grow while maintaining her established image. The fitted tops were still modest. They didn't reveal too much or stray too far from the wholesome look the show was known for, but they embraced a more flattering silhouette that reflected Marcia's growing maturity. These tops subtly accentuated her shape without ever crossing the line into anything inappropriate or suggestive. The shift in her wardrobe choices was an intentional one, designed to show Marcia becoming more self-assured, comfortable in her own skin, and confident in the process of growing up. The tops no longer hung loosely, hiding her form. The fitted design of the clothes enabled Marcia to express her identity through sophisticated young womanhood while maintaining her authentic self. The change in Marcia's clothing style required her to adopt early 1970s fashion while still maintaining her personal style. The early 70s marked a time of significant social and cultural change, especially in the way young women were portrayed in the media. Teenage girls were no longer just seen as innocent, passive characters. They were beginning to be recognized as individuals with their own desires, identities, and self-awareness. Marcia's fitted tops reflected this transformation. As more women began to embrace their independence and assert themselves in a rapidly changing world, television had to keep pace. The shift from loose to tailored tops was a subtle acknowledgement of this shift in society. In the cultural context of the time, showing a little more shape and confidence was still considered daring, but it was becoming more acceptable, especially for young women on television. Marcia's wardrobe transformation was a reflection of this broader cultural movement, one that was beginning to accept the idea that teenage girls, too, could have their own voice and presence without sacrificing their wholesomeness. What began as subtle shifts in fashion eventually paved the way for more freedom in how teen characters were portrayed. Sleeve-free, bold style, evolution. Marcia Brady's wardrobe evolution reached its final stage when she began embracing sleeveless looks and daring cuts, marking a significant departure from her earlier, more conservative outfits. What started with soft, billowy dresses and modest tops had gradually transformed into more structured, tailored pieces that reflected her growing confidence and maturity. But the introduction of sleeveless outfits took it to the next level. These looks were a bold statement of freedom, a reflection of the changing attitudes of the 70s that were pushing for more self-expression. As Marcia's wardrobe became more daring, it was clear that the character of Marcia Brady was no longer just the sweet, innocent girl next door. She had blossomed into a young woman ready to embrace the changing world around her. The sleeveless styles were more than just a trend. They were a reflection of the larger cultural shifts happening at the time. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a time of cultural and social upheaval, with a growing movement toward liberation, especially for women. As young people, especially women, began to demand more freedom in how they expressed themselves, television had to keep up. Marcia's transformation mirrored this cultural shift. Her sleeveless outfits were not just fashionable, they were a statement. The fashion of this period showed how society became more accepting because women started to adopt modern styles after ending their historical fashion restrictions. Marcia adopted this fashion trend by selecting bolder clothing options which matched the growing need for people to express their unique personalities. Marcia's transformation began when she switched from her original modest clothing to her present-day sleeveless outfits, which displayed more of her body because she wanted to show her growing self-identity. The final transformation served as a fashion statement while it functioned as a cultural expression. Marcia started to wear sleeveless clothing because young women at that time began to experience new cultural standards. The idealized image of the perfectly modest teenager who was seen but not heard was being replaced by a new vision of youth, one that was empowered, confident, and unapologetic. Marcia's move into sleeveless designs reflected this change. The Brady Bunch required her to keep a pure public appearance, but she chose daring clothing because she recognized that society had become less traditional. The sleeveless looks created an obvious message to viewers about Marcia's transformation into a more active character. She developed into a young adult who built her unique identity through a new way of self-expression, which had not been allowed for women on television. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Marcia Brady's iconic fashion evolution, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more. Stay tuned for the next video on the screen to continue the journey. You won't want to miss it.